Welcome back to the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast. I'm so glad you're here. And I've got an important question for you as you're coming back here, episode 23, as we're just continuing on this year. Super excited to have you back and add value and give you great content to consume and hopefully help you on your way to victory, to take action in your life. And I want to ask you a question today about how are you assessing your baseline? Where are you in business and life? Do you have a form of an assessment to give you a read, if you will, on where you're at currently in your business, where and you can cascade this into your life in other areas as well. Yeah, oftentimes we step on a scale, right? For weight, we can see that. We can assess, we can look and say, how much do I weigh today? For those of you watching me on the video, I've got a Fitbit here. We can look at that and it can give us a number as to where we're at. Now, those are great tools, and those are very factual tools as to where we're at in our weight, how many steps have we taken. With business, we can talk about key performance indicators, but I wanna back it up a little bit before we dive further into that in why it might be harder when we talk about things like our mind, our mindset. Where are we at in understanding what's our baseline for where we're at today. And I'm going to introduce to you guys another framework. Now, we've talked about the stack in the past. We've talked about the code, which is another important framework and understanding that I incorporate as part of the Steward Yourself program powered by Wake Up Warrior and the app I use, among others, to help you get clear on where you're at and where do you want to go. The reality is we don't always ask ourselves these questions. And I was even being asked my coach today, one of my coaches that I hire, because I tell you guys on this podcast, I live and I want to lead from what I live. So living this way, showing up this way is super important to me. That you guys that are listening and investing your time are getting the full understanding that I am living this myself. I'm just coming on here as a quote unquote coach. I got a certification. No, I'm coming here for your highest and best good. I'm here to call you up, not call you out in a way of living with more intentionality in your life. So I may be bringing a little bit more intensity here in these episodes because I feel the pressure, if you will, in a good way, that I want you to find victory. I want you to be clear where you're at so that you can move more quickly, compress time, and make the impacts, the influence that you truly desire in your life from your business and cascading, like I said, into your marriage, where you are with your children, where you are taking care of yourself physically and spiritually. So I asked this question today. I'm going to walk you guys through some questions, and I hope it's some prompting ones to you as to where you're at. We have to gain this factual understanding, like we talked about in the code previously, being real, raw, relevant, and results. We look at the fruits of our life. We've talked about that in the last episode, and about knowing ourselves previously as well. So I'm going to build on that, and I want to again introduce to you guys a way, an assessment. And if you don't have one, let me know, and I will happily share an assessment that you can do. I'm going to walk you through one here. Now, again, I can't solve all your problems on this podcast, but I can give you tools and resources that point you in the right direction. And if you feel like, hey, David, you're onto something, and I wanted to do know more, I want to experience more, reach out to me. I'm happy to share more with you. Of course, that's what I'm passionate about with Steward Your Business and why I have this podcast. All right. So as we get clear on this is going to help us set goals, realistic goals, SMART goals, if you're familiar with those, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time bound. We want to have the trajectory set so that we can actually get there. So we have a starting point for growth and improvement. Now, this helps us break down the lies, like we've talked about in the stack tool, the stories, the narratives, right? That have lies of omission, we have lies of commission. These lies are everyone has them. So we're trying to clear those out. We're trying to clear the cobwebs out. We're trying to get you guys clear on How do we move forward, remove self-deception, remove this wishful thinking, these thoughts of like, oh, da da da, I think I'm this way, I'm that way. Let's get real with where you're at. Like we talked about, being real, raw, and let's get relevant about where you want to go. So when we have this understanding and this baseline understanding of who we are, we can then make decisions on a reasonable, realistic, radical, and really even impossible goal. We can build up, we can expand that out and to help you really envision, begin with the end in mind, if you will, experience what that could be like in the future. But if we are living on lies, we're living on a false foundation, we are not going to be able to do that. It's just going to crumble upon itself. So I want to give you a simple framework here of 4 ways that you may be living. And I'm going to ask you some series of questions as you listen to this. And so you can just go follow along in this podcast episode where I will give you a real time assessment and you'll just have to keep track of what your answers are. And then you can find out where you're at the end of this. So there's a simple framework, just 4 levels of where you're at, whether you're asleep, meaning, just like I said, asleep. You're not awake, you're not in tune, you're completely just disconnected. And I'm going to talk about some different um, areas in that when we're dealing about your mind and where you're at, your mindset here. So we have an asleep where you're just completely out. Then out from asleep, you may be awakened, and so this stage of awakened and have some kind of alert. There's something going on around me, right? Have you guys ever been around something, there was an accident or something happened and you're like, you just don't know, you're awake, something happened, but you don't know all the details. You're not actively involved. You're not, you just, something happened and you're aware, you have some awareness, but you're not, moving toward a certain direction or any which way. And so this idea of asleep, meaning unaware, complacent, lack of progress, stagnant. You might be stagnant in your career, right? You're feeling stuck. You have a lack of motivation. This is where I call asleep. You're just kind of going through the motions. You know what you need to do each day, each week, but you're bored. You're not engaged. You don't feel purposeful. You don't have peace. We talked about many of these things in the past. And so we might be moving. Maybe you're not in that stage, but maybe you're in this awake stage where you have some awareness, you have some maybe motivation or realization here. You recognize there's some change that has to happen. There maybe you're at this place where you're like, man, this job isn't quite cutting it for me, and I think I need to go look somewhere else. But you haven't done anything about it yet. You're just kind of mulling it over in your mind. So we talk about being asleep, being awake, and I mentioned earlier, maybe, being active, right? Actively involved. Like, are you taking engagement? Are you being proactive? Are you taking consistent efforts to move in a direction that you believe is, important to you? Like I said, that you're passionate about, that you have motivation on. Uh, are you making noticeable progress? Is there high energy levels maintained, or is it draining you? This idea of being active is often a great place to be. And if you can get active, it really can lead you into the last stage I'm going to talk about here, as far as just simple framework. And then I'm going to ask you some questions to think about and apply this framework. Because what's knowledge if you don't apply it? It's really important that you take in information and then you apply it to your life. My hope is that as you listen to this episode and every episode, that you can take action on what you're learning, apply it to your life, and reap results. If we're just here to listen and sedate, just another podcast or something, this isn't what my desire. My aim for you is that you're making positive change in your life. You're not just changing, but really being transformed. You're becoming a new person, a new version of yourself, a much better person, the more pure version of yourself that's always been there. You're just uncovering and chipping away the layers. So here's the idea. We talked about being asleep, being awake, being active, and where can we get to this ultimate state of acceleration? So number one, we're active, we're moving, right? Acceleration is we're speeding up. This is what we call high performance, right? Rapid progress, achieving the goals, boom, 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 dominoes, knocking those down, knocking the pins down. We're getting breakthroughs. We're seeing exponential growth. We're seeing peak performance. This place of acceleration is an amazing place to be. Now, it's hard to stay in a place of acceleration without intentionality, without being proactive, without being in with the end in mind, without developing a mindset to support that way of being. You can take certainty and understanding from some people, you can apply it to your life, but ultimately you need to have it in you. You need to find that nugget of understanding, perspective. And so I'm just going to ask you some questions on this podcast today to help you start to think about how to assess where you're at. Because oftentimes we do not take the time to assess. We just keep going through, and we might be asleep or we might be awake and we have some realization, but we're not doing anything about it. My goal as a coach and a consultant here is to help you move, asking you the right questions, to be a catalyst, to get you to move, to take action in the direction you know you need to do that, to thrive in your business, rise up, be the most intelligent human leader, as we talk about, hence the name of the podcast, and that you are having lasting impact, lasting influence, legacy that is left not just from today or tomorrow or next year, but from years and decades to come that echo throughout time here. That's that. I'm not just telling fluff. I really do believe that. I really do believe that. And time is short. I'm 50 this year. I was just talking to friends last night. My mom was 55 years old when she passed away. I'm five years away from when my mom passed away, her age. Your time is short. The time to take action and be awakened to actively move toward where you need to be is now. Please don't delay. And so I want to encourage you guys as you're listening to this podcast, you're hearing the passion and the urgency in my voice because I really feel it is so important that you make progress in the direction that you need to in your own path. But please, please, as you're hearing this, I think anyone that's listening to this podcast, episode 23, is not asleep. I would pray that you're at least active or awake, leaning into active. And for those of you that are in between awake and active, that's certainly where an area where I can help you in all of those, but certainly I can help you expand your ability to get into accelerated through being powered by Warrior and the Warrior app, among other tools that I bring into the Steward Yourself program. But I'm just going to ask you some series of questions here so that you can assess your baseline, why it's important to understand that we don't have misguided efforts, right? We don't have unrealistic goals. We don't get burned out or frustrated because when like I said earlier, I'm all about a clear focus, being purposeful, allocating your resources. So you can talk about steward your business, steward yourself, right? So that you have enhanced personal and professional growth. So how do we do this? Like I said, I've given you guys a framework of asleep, awake, active, and accelerated. We have to have self-reflection and be honest in our self-assessment. Seek feedback from your mentors, peers, coaches like myself, right? Somebody that's going to speak truth to you in a loving and kind way, not just telling you what you want to hear, not just being nice. And we want to document where you're at so that you can look back and see the gap and celebrate where you're at today. We want you to be able to look and see the progress that you have made over time. So, as we move through these stages of moving from asleep to awake, we're cultivating awareness. We're gathering inspiration, perhaps, and we're getting small wins. We're making progress over time. As we move from awake to active, we can set those clear goals that create that action plan and maintain accountability. That means we're actually making consistent progress. And one of the questions I was asked today on one of the coaching calls was, why do I do what I do? Well, for me, it's about living this way. And by living this way, this enables me, like I said earlier, to then share and coach and guide others. If I don't live this way, I lose my effectiveness as a coach, as a leader. So it really behooves me to apply this to myself because if I don't, it's certainly going to not have a lasting effect on others. I need to live this way myself. So I'm speaking from my own firsthand experience here. And I've seen the difference as I've moved from awake to active and then active to accelerated, where I focus on optimization, advanced training, embracing challenges. Most people don't live in this world, unfortunately. But think about if we all did. Think about the impact that we would have on ability to face challenges and look at them as opportunities, ways that we could say, "Oh man, I see a way. How could we make this happen?" And we bring these people together. We bring these resources together. We are stewarding these things well. But most of our world, unfortunately, are asleep. At best, we might be awake, but we're definitely not moving in an active way, leading ourselves. And like I said in this podcast, if you lead yourself, you will lead others, your coworkers, your wife, your children. You'll have a positive impact in the world, but it starts with you. So here's an example. As you search and quest for knowledge and truth, which we all do if you're asleep, I'm going to give you an example of you can assess yourself. And someone that's asleep is going to invest little or no time or energy or money in expanding their knowledge or skill sets, their perspectives, right? They're just going to justify their beliefs and behaviors, and they're just going to be stuck there. So think about that. Are you that person? I think if you're listening to this podcast, I would bet money you're not because you're investing your time and energy listening to my voice here. Thank you. By the way, I so appreciate that. But if you're awake, your biggest goal is maybe just to match what you've done in the past and maintain it in the future. So you're kind of clinging to your current understanding. You understand, have an awareness. Things might change, but you're like, yeah, let's keep it right here. For those of you that are active, you've developed a formula in place to double your life or multiply the results of your life. You see a plan in the next 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. And while changing things, you know, as little as possible and leveraging what you already know may have had little desire to add any more knowledge, you're actively moving. What we're really getting you what you want to do is you have a formula, you've learned that, you're actively involved, but getting you to this accelerated place, right? Where you're constantly searching for opportunities to invest in time. It's a regular thing. It's just who you do, energy, time, money, right? This is what I do. I actively involved in multiple coaches, meet resources. I want to level up my perspective, my mind, and I'm convinced that there's more that is possible. So think about that for yourself right now. Where do you find yourself? Are you in this place of asleep, awake, active, or accelerated? And be real. We talked about this. You've got to be real with yourself. Just like I said in the code, you got to be real, raw about where you're at. Don't sugarcoat it. And then once you understand that foundation of the facts of your life, then you can actually make a choice to move in the direction. You can be active. You can accelerate. So you can step on the gas, so to speak, if you have this understanding. But if you're stuck, park, you're not going to make it very far. Um, yeah, we got to get you in gear and in motion. So this idea of asleep, awake, being active, and accelerated is so important. So I'm just going to give you a couple more here on this podcast because there's a lot more I could do. And for those of you again that want to get access to the Warrior app, there's actually all these assessments are in there. They're included as part of the whole package that I include. So you can do it as many times as you want. And you can see I'm just talking right now about perspective. Where are you at right now? But there's different areas that we can assess you at. And these tools have been used with tens of thousands of men and women, and getting them in clarity and getting them from asleep, awake, active, and then accelerated. I will say most of the time it's just getting people to awake and hopefully getting active. Accelerated is definitely a higher level place of being. And I don't see most people, and including myself, at times where I slip back down into active. So just be aware. Uh, the assessment alone can give you perspective. Look around those people around you. Are they asleep? Are they awake? Are they active? Are they accelerated? surround yourselves, I encourage you, by those that are active and accelerated. The more you can, you're going to have to level up to stay up with them in a good way. And that's what we create here in the Steward Yourself program. And those that come into this is that they start because they're like, I want to rise up with others. And so we invite you to rise up with us. You're definitely invited, and I would love to have you come and have a conversation with me and see if this is a good fit. But we need to look at, for example, how your action and passion is there to get things done. Again, to use this, apply this another time again. Are you asleep? Do you just kind of roll around in your brain as to what to do, how to do it? You just kind of keep thinking all these things, but you don't really take action. You're like, you're just kind of living in a fantasy world. Um, you're a do what I say, but not what I do guy. You're not living it out. So you're asleep about how you show up in action and passion in your life. Or perhaps maybe you're awake right now. You still can't understand it all. And you might still be in this comfort zone, but you're in this hit and miss game of action. So you have some kind of awareness, you recognize it, but you're not quite there yet to make consistent steps. You're inconsistent, you're in and out. And so you lack perhaps discipline, and you're not being truly obedient to what's been presented to you and what you need to do. An active doer, if you will, somebody that's just taking action and being passionate about it. You recognize that you want something bigger, better, brighter, right? It's outside of your comfort zone. So this is where the awake person might be, but they're like, oh, I can do some of it, but it's a little uncomfortable. The active person is moving toward that. They know it's uncomfortable for them at times, but they recognize that when they take this massive action, that they get massive reward. They know when they do this, they leverage the power of their action, and they will reap results. Now, again, this is a stage of where you might have some results, but again, you may, much like the awake, you're still kind of thinking about it. You're starting to move in the direction, but then an active could be up and down. Think about the stock market where it goes up and it can go down. Overall, we want you to be up and down, but the goal is that we want to get that band tighter, and that you're getting that acceleration, right? You become a master of how to do the work. You can visualize it in your mind, begin with the end in mind, right? You can create, you can get in that space, as I talk about in like the book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And then you can take action. You can push, push to get to your results, because it's worth it, and that you found a level of comfort in the uncomfortable. That craving action into the void. You're like, man, I gotta get there. I know this is worth it. So when you hear me talk about these frameworks of asleep, awake, active, accelerated, we can go through these in a lot greater detail. And there's a lot more here I want to share with you guys. But I wanted to just open up the concept to you to think about these things. Be aware, assess for yourself. And again, if you're not quite clear, like how to assess, how am I, for example, as a doer, what's my mindset? How am I self reliant? How am I accountable? How am I coachable or disciplined, detailed? Again, these are just some mindsets that we could address, whether you're asleep, awake, active. How are you being vulnerable or maybe grateful? How are you just sharing with others? Uh, these are all different mindsets I just want to introduce you to think about, and how we can get clear on where we're at. That's really what we want to do. Once you can get clearer at where you're at, and this is why we build on this in the Steward Yourself program, where we go call a fact map. We get clear on all domains of your life, so that you can have a strong foundation to help you move in a direction that you look back in life and you're like, man, I am so glad I did that. I'm so glad I made that choice today. That incremental choice that created the lifestyle that I'm truly grateful for. I'm truly appreciative of. Not looking back and saying, man, I can't believe I wasted all these years. Stress, working in a job, working in a position that at the end of the day people don't remember it. It wasn't something that you're like celebrated for. You're not looking back and saying, man, that was totally worth it. I want to be you to be in a place where you're making a lasting impact in whatever you do and whoever you get to contact with, and that you're proud of the life that you're living. And you know you're living with purpose and design, and you're the most intelligent human leader in a good way. You're stepping into that place. You're the person that others look to, and then you're in they're to your left, and you're mentoring them and you're guiding them. We have people always to the left of us and to the right of us. There's people to the left of me that I know I need to reach and help and serve, and there's people to the right of me that they're doing that for me. We all have that continuum. I want to get you in a place of active acceleration. And so, as you hear me talk about this on the podcast, and I thank you guys for continuing to listen and be involved with the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast, Steward Your Business. Please follow along. If if this resonated with you, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast platform you enjoy. It really helps me get the word out. Refer your friends and colleagues as you listen to this and say, you know what, this really resonated with me today. I need to take an account for where I'm at, assess where I'm at, because I'm really not where I want to be in life, but I know there's a better place. I know there's a better way. And one way that you can get there is through Steward Your Business, through the program that I offer as a way. But I encourage you, if it's not with me, find the one that works with you. But have the conversation. Reach out to me. Answer everybody message personally. You can find me on any of the platforms out there in LinkedIn, Facebook, and all those. I would love to hear from you and have that conversation and encourage you along the way to become that person that you've always been designed. It's just kind of thinking of it as a caterpillar in a cocoon. Where we're going to sort of break that open. You awaken, and that you are becoming that amazing individual that you can always be. I believe in you. I appreciate you guys listening here, and I look forward to our next conversation here on the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast. So until then, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys all. David Carr, your host here, and wish you all the best. Continue to strive, becoming awake, active, and accelerated. Thanks, guys. Love you guys.